You know, the strangest thing, the absolute weirdest part of all this is the quiet. I always figured the end would be loud, like in the movies. Yelling, crying, a dramatic door slam that shakes the whole damn frame. But it's not, it's just this hollow, ringing silence in my head, 3 years with Thea just gone. And the silence that's left behind is heavier than any argument we ever had. It's the kind of quiet that makes you start questioning the last 1,000 days of your life, makes you feel like you've been listening to static and calling it music. And the thing that finally did it, the thing that ended it all, it wasn't some big betrayal. It wasn't her cheating or some huge, explosive fight in the middle of the street. It was a sentence. One single goddamn sentence. Spoken in that calm, gentle, I'm only trying to help you voice of hers in my own parents' living room of all places. She was telling them a story about me, a story I'd never heard before, and it was like a light switch flipped in a room I didn't even know was dark. So yeah, man, pour me another one, will you? Because I need to walk you through this. I need to say it all out loud from the beginning. I feel like I have to retrace the steps just to prove to myself that the path was real and I wasn't just lost in the woods the whole time. It's the only way I can be sure I'm not the crazy one here. The only way to finally trust what I'm feeling again. When I first met Thea, it was like stepping into a different world. She was vibrant, that's the only word for it. She moved through rooms like she owned them, knew everyone, and always had the perfect, witty thing to say. I was just Owen. A project manager at a mid-sized construction firm. I'm good at what I do, damn good, and I'm proud of it. But it's not exactly the kind of thing you bring up at the art gallery openings she loved to drag me to. I was quieter, more comfortable listening than talking, happier with grease under my fingernails than a champagne flute in my hand. She told me she loved that about me. In the beginning, she called me grounded, her rock. It felt good. It felt like she saw something solid in me. At first, her help felt like love. It really, genuinely did. It was subtle, starting with the small things. Owen, honey, that checked shirt is sweet. It reminds me of home, but let's try this one. It's a solid color, it frames your shoulders better, makes you look more authoritative. Or, when you're talking to my boss, maybe don't mention the carburetor you're rebuilding on that old Ford. He won't get it. Let's talk about that museum exhibit we saw. It shows you're cultured. I went along with it. What did I know about fashion or art world small talk? It seemed like she was just giving me a set of keys to her world, and I appreciated it. I wanted to unlock those doors. I wanted to fit. But over time, the frame of her help began to shrink until it felt less like a picture window and more like a cage. Slowly, methodically, she started building this narrative brick by invisible brick. The central theme of this grand story was my deep-seated insecurity about my background. My dad, Mr. Evans to you, is a master mechanic. The man can listen to an engine for 10 seconds and tell you exactly which piston is misfiring and why. My mom's a community nurse, one of those people with a boundless supply of practical empathy. I grew up in a house where your worth was measured by your character, your word, and how well you could fix a leaky faucet, not by the brand on your shirt or the zip code you lived in. I was and am incredibly proud of them, but in Thea's story, my pride was just a defense mechanism. My quiet nature wasn't thoughtfulness, it was social anxiety. My preference for a simple weekend wasn't a choice, it was a limitation born of fear. If I wanted to spend a Saturday in the garage with my dad, getting my hands dirty on his old Triumph, she'd give me this sad little smile and say, I know you feel safe there, honey. It's your comfort zone, but you can't hide from the world forever. There's so much more out there for you. If I questioned a ridiculously expensive dinner she wanted to have, it wasn't about fiscal responsibility. It was, Owen, please don't do this. You don't have to feel like you don't deserve nice things. You are worthy of this. We are worthy of this. You need to let yourself believe that. She was so damn convincing. Her voice was always laced with this therapeutic, gentle concern, like she was a highly trained professional handling a delicate patient. She framed it as her life's project, her beautiful, noble mission to help me overcome my origins and realize my full potential. She was the enlightened artist, and I was her lump of clay, a diamond in the rough she was painstakingly polishing for the world to see. And the worst part, the absolute craziest, most insidious part, I started to believe her. I'd be at some stuffy party, feeling a knot in my stomach, and I wouldn't think, these people are pretentious and I'm bored. I'd think, damn it, Thea's right. I'm uncomfortable because I feel like I don't belong here. I'm projecting my insecurity. She wasn't just my girlfriend anymore. She had become the official narrator of my life, and the main character she was describing was this pathetic, insecure version of me I didn't recognize, but was slowly, terrifyingly, starting to accept as real. My own feelings became untrustworthy. Every instinct I had was filtered through the lens she'd created. Am I feeling this because it's true or because of my issues? It was exhausting. It was like walking through mud every single day. So this past Sunday, the stage was set for the final act. I just didn't know it yet. It was my parents' turn for the weekly family dinner. This is a sacred tradition in my family, you know? It's not some stuffy, formal affair. It's just a chance to connect, to eat my mom's legendary pot roast that could solve most of the world's problems, and to listen to my dad complain about the planned obsolescence of modern car engines. It's my comfort zone, my real one, not the sad, little psychological box Thea had built for me. It's the one place on Earth I've never had to pretend to be anything other than exactly who I am. The tension started in our apartment before we even left, a low hum of dissonance under the surface. I was getting dressed and I reached for this old, soft brown wool tie. It was my grandfather's. It's not flashy. It has a tiny, almost invisible coffee stain on the back from a breakfast he had probably 30 years ago, but I love it. It feels like history, like character. Thea came into the bedroom holding a sleek, skinny black tie like it was a lifeline. "You're not actually going to wear that, are you?" she asked. It wasn't a mean question, not on the surface. It was delivered in that specific tone she reserved for moments when I was about to make a mistake. A tone that was one part therapist, one part disappointed mother. "Yeah, I like it," I said, looping it around my neck. It was Gramps. She sighed, a soft, performative puff of air designed to signal her gentle suffering. "I know, sweetie. And that's so sweet, but it's a little frayed. It looks dated. The black one is sharper, more modern. It says successful, not sentimental." "I'm going to my parents' house, Thea, not a quarterly board meeting," I replied, feeling that familiar, hot prickle of irritation crawling up my neck. "My dad is going to be wearing a flannel shirt he's had since 1998. They don't care about my tie." And then she delivered the line, the one that set the whole damn evening on edge. She walked over and instead of arguing, she started fixing my collar around the old tie, a gesture of faux acceptance. She patted my chest twice like you would a nervous dog. "It's okay," she whispered, her eyes full of that practiced, profound understanding. "I know you get tense before seeing them. It's natural to want to retreat into things that feel safe and familiar, like old clothes. It's a classic anchoring behavior." She smiled gently, a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Don't worry, I'll be right there with you. I'll help you navigate it. You'll be great." Man, I can't even describe the feeling that washed over me. It was like being wrapped in a warm, wet, woolen blanket, suffocating. She wasn't just criticizing my tie anymore. She was diagnosing my psychological state based on it. My simple love for a family heirloom was twisted into a symptom of my supposed weakness. My desire to feel connected to my grandfather was pathologized. In her eyes, I wasn't an adult man making a simple, personal choice. I was a bundle of nerves needing her expert guidance to survive a simple Sunday dinner with the two people who raised me. The whole drive over, I was completely silent. I just stared out the passenger window, watching the houses blur by, feeling this heavy, powerless frustration churning in my gut. She had already written the script for the evening, and in her version, I wasn't the son coming home. I was the patient, and she was the visiting doctor. The dinner itself was fine. Deceptively normal, even. My mom had outdone herself. The pot roast was so tender it fell apart if you looked at it too hard, and Thea, to her credit, was at her absolute most charming. She laughed at my dad's corny jokes about engineers. She raved about my mom's cooking with what seemed like genuine delight, and she told a funny, self-deprecating story about a disaster at her pottery class that made everyone chuckle. She was playing the part of the perfect, down-to-earth girlfriend, and for a couple of hours I almost let myself believe it. I watched her chatting easily with my parents, and I thought, maybe I'm the one who's crazy. Maybe I had overreacted about the tie. Maybe she was just trying to help in her own clumsy, overbearing way. The knot in my stomach, the one that had been tightening all afternoon, started to loosen. After the meal, my mom and I fell into our usual routine. We went into the kitchen to clear the plates and start the coffee. It's a ritual for us, a time to talk without the formality of the dinner table. We were scraping dishes and I was telling her about a leaky faucet I'd promised to look at, the familiar, comforting rhythm of domestic life washing over me. Thea stayed in the living room with my dad. I could hear the low murmur of their voices, a pleasant, indistinct hum in the background. I wasn't paying attention. I was just happy in that simple, uncomplicated way you can only be in your childhood home, a place where you are known completely. When the coffee was brewed, I picked up the tray with the steaming mugs, the cream, and the sugar bowl. As I walked down the short hallway that connects the kitchen to the living room, their voices became clearer. Thea was speaking, and the tone had shifted. It was no longer light and social. It was that same soft, serious, therapeutic voice she'd used on me in the bedroom, the voice of a gentle authority diagnosing a patient. It made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I stopped just out of sight in the shadows of the hallway arch. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, not really, but my feet felt like they were nailed to the floor. I couldn't have moved if the house was on fire. I know Owen would never tell you any of this himself, Thea was saying to my father. Her voice was dripping with a kind of gentle, conspiratorial empathy, as if she and my dad were the two adults in the room discussing a troubled child. His pride, it's all tied up in this idea of being the strong, silent type he learned from you. But deep down, he's always been so insecure about his background, about not coming from a family with, connections or academic prestige. He feels like he doesn't deserve the world I'm trying to show him, the people I'm introducing him to. I froze, the tray in my hand suddenly weighing 1,000 pounds. The coffee mugs rattled faintly against the ceramic, a tiny, betraying sound in the quiet hallway. It was like the air had been sucked out of my lungs. She continued, her voice a masterpiece of loving, patient concern. It's been a long road, Mr. Evans, but I'm trying so hard to help him build up his confidence. To make him see that he's worthy, that where he comes from doesn't have to define his future. It's a struggle, honestly. He resists it sometimes, retreats back into what he knows. But he's making progress. He's slowly learning to accept that he belongs in those rooms with me. Every word was a physical blow. She was painting a picture of me as this damaged, insecure charity case she had graciously taken on. A project, her magnum opus, and she was doing it in my own home, to my own father. The man who taught me how to change a tire, how to frame a wall, and how to shake a hand with integrity. The man who represents everything I am proud of in myself. She was explaining my non-existent shame to the very source of my pride. The sheer, breathtaking audacity of it, the profound, soul-crushing disrespect to it, it broke something inside me. All the little doubts, all the times I'd questioned my own feelings, they all coalesced into one single, horrifying moment of absolute clarity. This wasn't love. This was a hostile takeover of my very identity. I stood there in the shadows, waiting for my dad's response. My heart was pounding in my ears. I braced myself for the worst. I imagined him a polite man who avoids conflict, just nodding along. Maybe he'd say something like, "Oh, well, we're glad he has you, Thea," just to be nice, just to keep the peace. Part of me, the part that Thea had so carefully conditioned, expected it. It would have been the final nail in the coffin of my sanity. But that's not what happened. There was a long pause. I heard the soft clink of my dad's coffee mug being placed back on its saucer. The silence stretched out, thick and heavy. When he finally spoke, his voice wasn't angry or confrontational. It was just calm, as solid and unmovable as the old oak tree in their backyard. "Thea," he said, and the simple, direct use of her name held more power than a shout ever could. "Owen is the most grounded man I know. He knows exactly who he is and where he comes from, and he's proud of it, just like his mother and I are proud of him." He paused again, and I could picture him perfectly, looking her straight in the eye, his expression not unkind, but utterly firm. "I don't know who that insecure boy you're talking about is," he finished, his voice level and clear, "but he's not my son." That was it. That was the lightning strike. It wasn't a defense of me. It was a statement of fact, a simple, undeniable truth spoken into the heart of the fiction Thea had built around us. In that one moment, my dad handed me back my own reality. He gave me the external validation I didn't even know I was starving for. He saw the same thing I felt. The person Thea was describing was a complete stranger. The fog in my head, the constant, low-grade hum of self-doubt she had cultivated for 3 years, it just evaporated. It was gone. I wasn't crazy. My feelings were real. The discomfort, the irritation, the feeling of being suffocated, it was all justified. It wasn't my insecurity. It was her manipulation. My dad's words were the anchor in the storm, the one fixed point that allowed me to see how far I had drifted. I wasn't the problem. The story she was telling was the problem. I didn't storm into the living room. There was no dramatic confrontation. What was the point? My dad had already said everything that needed to be said, and Thea's lie had been exposed not by my anger, but by a simple, quiet truth. I just backed away silently, down the hall and into the kitchen. I set the coffee tray down on the counter with a steady hand. My mom looked up at me. "Everything okay, honey? You look pale." "Never better, Mom," I said, and I meant it. I felt a strange, cold calm settle over me. For the first time in years, the noise in my head was gone. The ride home was dead silent. The air in the car was thick with what had happened, but Thea didn't seem to notice. Or maybe she did, and she was just recalibrating, figuring out her next move. Just as we pulled onto our street, she finally spoke, her voice oozing that familiar, therapeutic warmth. "You did so well tonight, Owen," she said softly. "You were a little tense at first, but you really relaxed. See, it's not so hard." I didn't answer. I just let her words hang in the air, hollow and absurd. I let the silence do the work. I pulled the car over to the curb, a good 50 yards from our apartment building, and put it in park. "What's wrong?" she asked, a flicker of genuine confusion in her eyes now. "Get out," I said. It wasn't a request. My voice was flat, devoid of any emotion I recognized. "What?" "Owen, don't be ridiculous. What is this about? Was it something my father said? You're spiraling again. This is a classic self-sabotage." "Thea," I interrupted, turning to look at her for the first time. I saw a stranger, a strategist, her mind racing to find the right combination of words to regain control. "It's over. Get out of my car." I didn't wait for her to argue. I got out, walked to a nearby street lamp, and called an Uber. By the time she had driven the car to our building and gotten upstairs, I was already there. It took me less than 20 minutes. I had one duffel bag and a toolbox. I packed my clothes, my grandfather's watch, and a framed photo of my dad and me next to his Triumph. When she walked in, her face was a mask of disbelief and wounded confusion. "Owen, what are you doing? You can't just throw away 3 years because you're having an insecure episode." I just looked at her, standing there by the door with my bag in my hand. "No, Thea," I said, and my voice was my own again. "My father just reminded me who I am, and I'm not the main character in your sad little story. We're done." Then I walked out. I didn't look back. I blocked her number before the Uber even reached the end of the street. A clean break. It's been a couple of months now. I've got a small apartment on the other side of town. It's nothing fancy, but it's mine. The other day, I spent the entire Saturday afternoon on my little balcony, taking apart and cleaning the carburetor from an old radio I found at a flea market. I had grease up to my elbows, classic rock playing from a crappy little speaker, and a cold beer sweating on the railing next to me, and halfway through it, I just stopped. I realized that for the first time in 3 years, I was doing something I loved, something that was unapologetically me, without a voice in the back of my head whispering that it was unsophisticated or a symptom of some deep-seated fear. There was no one there to diagnose my hobbies, no one to tell me I should be at a gallery opening instead. The silence I was so afraid of in the beginning, it's not a hollow silence anymore. It's a peaceful quiet. It's the sound of my own thoughts, my own instincts. It's the sound of reality. Last weekend, I went over to my parents' place, and my dad and I spent 6 hours in the garage getting that old Triumph engine to finally turn over. When it roared to life, we didn't say a word. We just grinned at each other, covered in oil and sweat. In that moment, I knew exactly who I was. I'm my father's son, and that's more than enough. That feeling, man, that's a weight off my shoulders.